Hi guys, greetings from Spain. I'm right now here at the Rough and Down Tennis Academy in Mallorca, just relaxing here for a few days. If you haven't checked out my interview with Tony and the Dung, do you remember to check it out right above here? I'll link it here. But this interview isn't really about Tony, it's about the one and only Rick Macci. Obviously, he's the childhood coach of Serena and Venus Williams, Andy Roddick, Maria Sharapova, and so many others. I actually had the pleasure of being coached and actually met Rick back in 2015 when I was in Florida. I'll link that video actually in the description below. Do check that out. We just had an hour-long chat. We just recorded it in my bedroom at the Rough and Down Tennis Academy. It's 1 hour long. I really do hope you listen to the full hour. It's really, really good. Yeah, so enjoy. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, and I hope you enjoy our conversation.
There, I'm Rick Macci, and you're listening to the Double Bagel.
Rick, it's great to have you on the podcast. We're speaking, of course, with the movie King Richard out recently, which tells the story of the Williams family, but also tells your own story in a way. Is it safe to say life has been a little bit more busier than usual for you the past few months? And
um, well, it believe it or not, I'm always busy. I even before this, I teach 50 hours a week still now, 7 days a week. I get up every morning at 3:30 and ready to go. I open up the park where the academy is. So yeah, it's always been busier. It's always been busy, but yeah, there's a few more phone calls and
yeah,
obviously just doing a lot of interviews on podcasts and some TV stuff. And the way the movie came out, it was amazing. It hit on all cylinders. And the one thing it made me feel great about, it really showed the whole world, what I did, for the family. And at the end of the day, how much I cared for the girls and I was on a mission. So I think more than anything, that's what I like the most. But yeah, it's been busy.
I mean, could you have imagined that when your coaching career all started that someone would play you in a Hollywood movie one day?
Um, no, I don't think anybody would. But the fact that you just asked that question, when I went to Compton in 1991, and then Richard and I became, he was my best friend. We became great friends, and Venus and Serena were like my own daughters. We'd have conversation, and Richard said, "Rick, one day
Mm.
they're gonna not only do a movie about my kids, but they're gonna do a movie about me." Now you got to remember, Venus and Serena were 10 and 11. And this guy's talking to me like this, and I'm sitting there going, because I deal with all kinds of parents, and and I'm just sitting there taking it. He goes, "And you know what? You're going to be in that movie." And this was in 91. So you got to remember, Richard was way out there in a lot of things that he said, but every single thing you saw in that movie, you have no idea how it was so spot on
Mm.
from A to Z. So to answer your question, no, I would have never thought it, but for it to come full circle like this, and then being able to reconnect with Richard, who I saw last week and went to his house in West Palm, and then being with Venus and Serena at the after party at the red carpet, the whole thing's just been amazing.
Mm. I mean, his prophecy came true, but I want to go back in time. Tell us the
Yeah.
story of you going on Richard's bus to East Compton Hills Country Club and watching Serena and Venus play for the first time. What was going through your
Yeah.
mind on that journey?
Well, that's long ago. Obviously, I'm telling it a lot more now because people wanted to know how this all started. I was a director of tennis at Greenleaf Golf and Tennis Resort in Haines City. And, I get a call from this guy, Richard Williams. And he said, "I'd like you to come out here and take a look at my girls." And back then, um, I either had kids come to the academy or I saw them at a junior tournament. I never, ever in my life, and still haven't to this day, gone on a plane and went and looked at two kids. Now, needless to say, going to Compton was the best vacation Rick Macci ever went on. But that being said, we talked, and the only thing I knew about Compton was riots and whatever. And he said, Rick, I promise I won't get you shot." He's a funny guy, and we were laughing the whole time. And Venus had an article in the New York Times about 3 months earlier. I guess she was undefeated in the 10 and under. She had a little sister, and I guess I was more curious than anything. So I said, "You know what? And some agents also said, Rick, you should take a look because this guy's very much interested in having you coach those girls. So I got on a plane the next weekend. I went to Compton, went to LAX. That night at the hotel, Richard and Orsine come. It was like yesterday. And Venus and Serena. And Venus was on one leg and Serena on the other leg. And they had their arms around the dad and kissing. Amazing close-knit family. What you saw in that movie, it was exactly like that and more. It was amazing, even back then. And Richard, I'll never forget this. He asked me like 30 questions. I thought I was in a deposition or something. He like grilled me because he wanted to know that if he was going to let someone in their circle, they wanted a father figure, a role model besides someone that could, put this thing and together and make it world class. And it was so funny because Venus Serena, they were just staring at me. We talk about it. And I told them that at the after party. I think they had acquaintances. They didn't have a lot of friends. So we talked for about 2 hours. And the next day, Richard goes, we're going to pick you up at 7 o'clock. And we're going to East Compton Hills Country Club. And I said, sounds good to me. So they come in that red bus that you saw in the movie. It was identical. They pick me up. I get in the passenger seat and I get harpooned in the buttock by a spring. I'm going, this is crazy. Then I look in the back. There's about 4 months worth of McDonald's wrapper, garbage, old clothes, tennis balls, ball hoppers. The whole back is like a mess. And then little Venus and Serena are sitting back there. And I'm going, this is crazy. Because remember, I'm at a 5-star resort, Greenleaf Golf and Tennis Resort. And it's just like the craziest thing ever. So we're driving for about 10, 15 minutes. And I'm looking around going, well, wait a minute. This is a strange place for a country club. So we pull up to a park. There's about 20 guys playing basketball. There's people, Eric, on the ground, passed out, people drinking, people smoking. And it was amazing because we get out and we had to go across the basketball court to go to the tennis court. And the court, it just parted like the Red Sea. And people go like this. Hey, Richard. Hey, King Richard. They called this guy King Richard. How crazy is this? This was May of 1991. And then they go, hey, Meek, because Serena's middle name was Serena Jamaica Williams. And they go, hey, VW. So they knew the girls already. And I think it was because of the New York Times being there 4 months earlier, and there's probably a lot of stuff going on. So they already like celebrities. I don't think there's a lot of little girls getting a lot of publicity in Compton, California. So we go onto the tennis court. But like I said, the basketball court parts like the Red Sea. We go on the basketball court. I had a brand new box of Wilson balls shipped there. And Richard goes, Rick, we don't use new balls. He goes, we want to use old balls because I want them digging them out and getting lower. And I'm going, I got it. It was just a little different, So we go onto the court. The courts are terrible. You and I wouldn't play on it. It was like a bomb went off. We go up to the net post. Richard had an old basket, rusted. There was like 7 chains wrapped around this basket. It took him 20 minutes to get it off. Okay. It was insane. Remember, I'm at a 5-star resort, and so now we get on the court and I start doing drills. And this is a great lesson for any parent or coach, or even Rick Macy. You don't judge a book by its cover. The book, the cover could look amazing and the book bad. The cover could be amazing and the book bad. So we start hitting, and I'm just sitting there going, what in God's name am I doing in Compton, California on a Saturday? They weren't any better or any worse than maybe 60, 70 in the nation, which there's a lot of kids like that. Not that that's bad. I'm just saying. And remember, I had Jennifer Capriati for 3 years. And at 12 years old, she won the National Girls 18 as a 12-year-old, a record that still stands today since 1988. And she's probably the greatest junior player of all time. So my baseline or reference point for greatness is probably different than anybody in the world. I mean, she had her racket back in the parking lot, her knees were bent, the ball was on a string, and she had great fundamentals from the late, great Jimmy Everett. So I'm seeing Venus and Serena hit the ball. Arms are going one way, legs are going another, hair's going this way, beads are falling off, going onto the court. It was crazy. It was just tentacles it was like stuff going everywhere. So after about an hour, I said, let's play some competitive points. So me and Serena were going to play against Venus, because Venus was much, much bigger and stronger. Serena was 9 years old and she mentally wasn't there yet. So we started playing points. And after 5 minutes, I totally freaked out. The whole landscape changed for both girls. The footwork got better. They were popping the popcorn, extra butter. The footwork was better. The preparation got a little more, advanced, but the burning desire to get to the ball, I never saw anything like it. Two little girls try so hard. Now, you can try hard and work at McDonald's. Okay, that'd be a good quality, but it was amazing. I just never, and they almost ran so hard to get to the ball, they almost fell over. It was just a rage, but it all because the fans were in the stands, and I said, let's keep score. Let's compete. The whole thing changed. And it blew my mind. And so I'm thinking, okay, this one's going to be 6'1", this one 5'10", big, strong, fast, and they go for the jugular. I'm thinking this. So we take a break. I go up to Richard. This is in the movie. I go, Richard, let me tell you something. You got the next female Michael Jordan on your hand. And he puts his arm around me. He goes, no, brother, man, I got the next two. And I had no doubt at all, with the right help financially and hitting partners and my time every day, I knew what I could do with this. But what really blew me away, Venus then goes, Daddy, can I go to the bathroom? So she goes out the gate. For the first 5 feet, she walks on her hands. Then the next 5, she does backward cartwheels. And I'm going, this is crazy stuff. Okay. I go up to Richard. I said, not only can they be #1 in the world, these girls can transcend the sport. Tennis has never seen anything like this. So I'm glad it's a great lesson. When it became a competition, the whole thing changed. But I knew right then and there, tennis has never seen something like this, because in the early 90s, if you were big and strong, you weren't nimble. They were going to bring a whole nother animal to women's tennis, which they have. And, the rest is history.
I mean, Rick, it seems to me from the movie that it was Richard's main job to shape Venus and Serena's character, and your main job to shape their technique. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And that character started probably at birth. I mean, this is why, even though I was no longer involved after 95, I've always had amazing, incredible things to say about Richard. He was a world-class dad, and the mom. She didn't get enough credit. She was amazing too. But Richard, because he was there a little bit more, always life lessons. They brought their books to the court. If it rained, they went up to my office every night, whether it was a good practice, happy, mad, sad, bad. Rick, thank you very much. Okay, always looking me in the eye, always picking up the balls. These are things. They would go home at night on a tripod and do interviews, preparing for the future. This guy was preparing them for the future, and it was all about character. It was all about education. It was all about other stuff. You don't want to play, he wouldn't make them play. So this is what people don't know. And no one had a better front row seat, maybe than Orsine, the wife, than Rick Macci, because I was there every day. Richard, like I said, he was my best friend, and Venus and Serena are like my daughter. So to answer your question, yeah, he had his thoughts and beliefs, but I was there for one reason, for Venus and Serena. I wasn't there for Richard, even though he's the father. I could deal, and me, that's one of the best things that I can do. I can deal with all the personalities. I tell people this all the time. For me to have my hands around this for 4 years and not playing tournaments, and her going to make her debut and shocking the world, I should be in the Hall of Fame just for that, for putting up with Richard for 4 years. I mean, it's just people, because you can see from the movie, he's very, very stubborn, but it was all about the girls, and I knew how to, but I love the guy because I had so much respect for him as a father, because I've seen this movie many times, not the King Richard, the movie of parents and kids, and they just don't get it. And that's another reason why I dove in, not just sweat equity and time and putting this whole infrastructure together, but all the money that was put into this to make it happen, the whole family. That's what, because when I believed, and I believed in the girls, and I had no doubt, but I believed in Richard because I loved the guy, the way he thought. Very different than probably any other tennis parent I've ever had, even Stefano Capriati or all the parents I've been involved with. And it didn't bother me that he didn't want to play tournaments, even though the movie made it sound like that, because I got it. So at the end of the day, you're right. The heavy lifting was left up to me and the hitting partners, but every stone I tried to unturn. But that being said, I wanted to keep them natural also. I wasn't going to put them in a box because biomechanically they wanted to do some things a little different, but I wanted them to really I wanted to take advantage of their athleticism. And what maybe some people thought was taboo or not fundamentally sound, I saw it as a weapon and a disguise, because me and Richard were way ahead of the curve, okay, as far as what was coming, because the game of tennis was changing then. The technology, the rackets, the power, as you heard in the movie, a lot of stance. There's just a lot of things that I let him do, but shortening the backswings, just cleaning things up the best I could do. And when you're with someone every single day and you're on a mission, you're not going to be denied.
I mean, would you say then that the so-called champion mindset or character is something that can be trained, like what Richard did with the daughters, rather than something that's innate that you're born with?
I think it's both. I think if it's okay, Kenan had that. I coached Kenan from age 5 to 12. Sharapova had that when I saw her at 11 and I had her. The mental part was there. Okay. And I've had other people that had that, but maybe they weren't as good technically, or maybe they weren't as fast. You know what I'm saying? It's a package, but a lot of the people that I've coached that have been number one or one Grand Slam, they checked a lot of those mental boxes, but that's very much environmental. You can facilitate it because the environment I created also. People don't realize what a big impact I had on Venus and Serena's childhood. And you know me, I mean, the positivity and, just the way I am. And, I proved that over and over again, not with Venus and Serena, but many people, the way people think and the way they believe and not make excuses. But yeah, that was done early on. And that's why I made the decision, the mental part, to be able to handle pressure and the way they would look at the world. I already saw that. Now, the hard work was going to be the technical and the opportunity and the financial. But I saw that on two people that could run like gazelles. And so when they had the mental part, in my opinion, and physically, they hit the genetic jackpot. Okay, that's a nice starting place for anybody. But you know what? Nobody else took a chance on them except Rick Mason.
Mm. I mean, from my standpoint as an observer, Serena had a better first serve and a second serve than Venus. But Venus was maybe a bit more athletic, had better volleys, more wingspan, and obviously was a bit taller than Serena. Would you agree that, and should Venus have won more than Serena, given those qualities?
Amazing question. And I'm glad you asked me that. And I agree about the serve. Serena always had a better natural throwing motion. And biomechanically, they both did things a little different because of their body type and so on. But they had one thing and two things in common. Both had amazing power and amazing placement. So they got the end result. But Serena was a little more natural in her throwing movement. Okay. But to answer your question, I tell this to everybody. I think if Venus would have stuck to the plan, okay? I mean, after her debut, I was still there like 8-10 more months. And then after that, Richard took the whole thing over. Venus came to the match against Sanchez in that debut or second match 33 times. She came to the net against Novotná at Wimbledon 35. And early on, she came to the net against Steffi Graf 30 sometimes. The plan was to take the second serve of your opponent and come in a lot. Okay? And to serve and volley a little bit. And when you got off balance, Venus was at the net. I've never had a player go from point A to point B faster than VW. I mean, she was like the wind. The problem is, and listen, I'm not Monday morning quarterbacking here or whatever. I love the girls and they're both iconic and they did amazing. But Venus had gifts from above. Got Serena didn't. I called her the next female Michael Jordan. She could jump higher on the scissor kick overhead, and I still haven't seen it to this day of any female I've coached. And her wingspan, you couldn't pass the girl. So just that alone, that you're in someone's face, I tried to develop that type of game. Obviously, you got to hit ground strokes. You got to run and compete. And if someone hits 20, you got to hit 21. I get that. But I just thought Venus would have been at the net so much more. Okay, even if she didn't have to hit a volley, just that alone freaks people out. And in women's tennis, the second serve is very delicious. It's very appetizing. And, you know, to hit it and stay back's one thing. But I thought she'd be at the net and have a little bit of Martina in her with that style. And that just evaporated since I was no longer involved. Because I think about it, at 14, she came to net 33 times. That's crazy. She hadn't done that a lot. So I think Venus would have been the greatest player ever, okay, if she'd have taken advantage of those God-given attributes. Now, I know maybe without Serena, there's no Venus, and without Venus, there's no Serena. I get all that. And she would have had to go through Serena. But her style of play, there was a lot left off the table, in my opinion. Because I think when you get out there on the tour, especially when you can run or when you get nervous, when you can run like Venus or Serena, you can be nervous and still win a Grand Slam just by running and competing and out athleting the other person. And they did that a lot. But I think VW, I mean, listen, if she'd have played doubles or mixed doubles, she probably would have won 100. But they didn't have time to do that. This is how amazing, because she had something that no one else has, and we haven't seen it. Someone that was that fast, that quick, that agile, okay, could jump that high and had the wingspan, okay? So first off, great question, but it is what it is, okay? And they're both champions, but yeah, Venus, there was a lot there that I thought was going to be exploited, but listen, they're two of the greatest of all time, and Serena, in my opinion, is the greatest.
For sure. I mean, Rick, it's known to many that there were a few disagreements on the contract side with Richard, which eventually led to the end of the coaching relationship. How did it affect you personally at the time, and does it still affect your relationship with the Williams family to this day?
No, not at all. No, listen, when it was all said and done, we worked everything out, and I was more than happy, you know, so there was no problem whatsoever. And like I said, you know, being able to reunite at the red carpet, and everybody was laughing and a few tears, and we went back down memory lane. The stories I have about Venus and Serena, they didn't remember some of them. They were laughing so hard about, I got to tell one real quick. I mean, one time Serena was on, I was on the course, Serena and Venus was over there, and Serena wasn't moving her feet. And I said, Serena, you got to move your feet. She goes, why? I said, well, she was 11. It was like 100 degrees in Florida. She goes, why? And I go, well, you said you want to be number one. She goes, I will be number one. And I said, well, what do I got to do? She goes, Rick, I'm really hungry. Can you have Scott go to the snack machine, get me some hot curly fries, a Snickers bar, and a Pepsi? And on the way to work today, Daddy drove by a stand on Linton Boulevard. Can you get me a Green Day t-shirt? And I said, so if I go and get you the Snickers bar, the curly fries, the Pepsi, and get a Green Day t-shirt, are you going to move your feet? She goes, Rick, you see that girl over there? She was pointing to Venus. You see that tall girl over there? I'll make her look sour than molasses. So I had Scott go to the snack machine, get the curly fries, the Snickers bar, the Pepsi. The next day, he was going to go get the Green Day t-shirt. He brings everything back. Serena has her snack, okay, for like 15 minutes. She gets on the court for 1 hour straight. She's popping the popcorn, extra butter, sweat's coming off this little girl like Niagara Falls. She doesn't stop for 1 hour. It gets to be 10 after 3. She turns around and looks at me. She goes, Rick, you better have that Green Day t-shirt here in the morning. Yeah. So the moral of the story, I won. I motivated her. She won. She got better. But this was Serena at a young age. She wasn't as mature yet as Venus. So, but to answer your question, these are the stories that we were talking about at the after party. And There's so many more like that. So we have a great relationship. I love the girls. Just last Thursday, I went up to West Palm and visited Richard. He's in great health. His memory's like a steel trap. He, at 79 years old, he remembers all the stories. We were laughing and hugging. A great guy. Because listen, when you love someone that much and respect him as a father, forget that I didn't continue on. As you know, I just reload, regroup, had over 300 national champions. I've done this for so long. No, there's no regrets whatsoever. But Richard's doing great, feeling great. So yeah, everything's phenomenal. So what people say or what they read, that's tabloid stuff or whatever. But no, it was amazing. And the movie, you saw how it came across. We were family. I was part of that family. I wasn't just Venus Serena's coach. And that came out loud and clear, because when you love what you're doing and you love the people you're doing it with, and remember, they weren't that good then. This could have catastrophically blown up. They could have got injured. I mean, this might have never happened. Who knows how this plays out? I was on a mission. Richard was my best friend. I knew what Venus and Serena could do, and I wasn't going to be denied, no matter what the cost was, the effort. I was on a mission, and any coach can relate to that. When you believe and nothing's going to stop you, and you put two people together like myself and Richard, the rest is history.
I mean, talk to me about Mary Pierce, who was on the podcast last year. What was she like as a person, and how did you mold her game?
Well, that's interesting, because she was like 15 or 16, just like when I had Anastasia Meskina, she was 17. But Mary, they came from IMG, the dad, the whole family. They were actually there the same time Venus and Serena was, and Roddick. I had everybody there at the same time. I mean, how crazy is that? The 4 Grand Slam people, they were at different ages. Roddick was the same age as Serena, but Mary was 15 or 16. But I knew she'd be like one of the best players in the world. She was so authoritative off the ground. The way she turned on the ball with those flat, hard ground strokes, it was like missiles going from North Korea off both sides. And she took the ball early. And I told Jim, I said, listen, she can't back up. She has to hold the baseline. She was a good athlete. She wasn't like the best ever. Her defense was okay, but it wasn't like a defensive specialist. But she ran the show. She could beat anybody, anytime, anywhere with those ground strokes. Hard, flat, clean ground strokes. And when that girl was confident, she was brutal. She could beat anybody. So, and especially in women's tennis, it's a little different. Men, you don't have to cover quite as much of the court, and you don't play quite as much defense and not as much spin. But from the forehand and backhand, she was as good as anybody, and her serve got really good. But she was one of the nicest, most considerate players I've ever coached. Great competitor. I loved my time coaching Mary. Her dad was still very much in the picture, and I just tried to do the best I could to help her. But I had no doubt she would be a top 10 player. And with those ground strokes, if she believed, she could beat anybody in the world and maybe win a couple Grand Slam. But I love Mary Pierce, and one of my all-time favorite students.
And what was coaching Andy Roddick like? What was his strengths when he came to you? And what did you work on to make him better?
Another great question. I actually had his brother, John, I had him for 3 years, from sophomore, junior, senior, one of the best juniors in the world, great competitor. No one believed in his older brother, John. I loved how competitive he was, John. And, then his little brother, Andy, was 9 when he came to me. The whole family moved from Texas to the academy. And right off the bat, I saw this little mosquito. That's what I'll call him. Because, like a mosquito, they just don't leave you alone. He was just always bothering everybody, but in a good way. He was just always there, pesty, feisty. But I love that. His thirst for competition was like no other. Just a brutal competitor, even as a little peanut, But when I worked with Andy, because I work with him every day, they took privates, and obviously we're in the camp. He had this forehand where he led with the elbow back. And it was ironic because he kind of had the ATP forehand, which I really have described in great detail. And, it's pretty much standard around the world. There's like 6 million views on YouTube. He actually taught me a little bit. When I saw the elbow go back first and it was a little higher, it kind of kept the racket to the outside. But when he hit it, it made the racket flip the other way. And I'm thinking, this looks very different, but it worked. So I didn't change it. I tweaked his grip a little bit. And I just loved that he loved to hit the ball. And his serve was kind of all over the place. A lot of external rotation. The foot, he was way into the court. I did a lot of work on the serve. And as he got older, he experimented, put his feet together and that stuff. But yeah, his serve was all over the place. I got video to show what it looked like and where we got it. But of all the boys, obviously Tommy Ho, the youngest ever to win Kalamazoo as a 15-year-old, like 15, 16 gold balls. Tommy was like my son. But I really enjoyed coaching Andy because he was a competitor. We were cut from the same cloth. I just loved that he loved the battle. That's what I loved about Andy Roddick. When he lost to someone, he'd come back up, say, "Can I play him again? Can I play him again?" And I'd say, "Well, you got to earn it." So, but I knew that he would be a great pro. I didn't know at 12 years old when he won nationals. I think he lost to Drew Brees, the quarterback of the Saints. Drew Brees played tennis. At 12 years old, if someone would have said he's going to win US Open at 19, I might have taken that bet, but he grew when he got to be like 15, 16. His serve probably improved 25 miles an hour and he became #1 junior in the world. But he had something inside him like his other brother, John. It's just that his forehand was nuclear and his serve was supersonic. And he has, in my opinion, he has one of the fastest serves with the highest percentage in the history of tennis. And that wasn't in the water. It was a team effort. And one quick story, how competitive Andy was. One time I went to the Nebraska-Florida State football game with the whole family, and they were from Nebraska, and I was rooting for Florida State. So I had one Roddick on one side and one on the other. And every time Florida State did something good, I would cheer. And I got an elbow from the right and an elbow from the left. And after about, a quarter, I said, I think I'm going to root for Nebraska. That's how competitive they were. They were the first in line to get a drink. But that's why I love both Andy and John. They're just two of the guys like me, and a lot of people know what I'm talking about. And that's why Andy, really in his career, he never had any bad losses. Once he got in that top 10, he was a permanent fixture. Sure, the backhand could have been better. He wasn't going to move like Djokovic. Very few guys do. But I think he's a champion because I determine a champion by consistency. He was a permanent fixture and he never had any bad losses. And every time the bell rung, the guy showed up. But he was like that as a pipsqueak. He was just always there. And I saw that in him. But he got the most out of his ability. And to me, that's a true champion. But I love Andy Roddick.
I mean, could he ever achieve more given his strengths?
Well, I think we all in life think we could achieve more. If he doesn't miss that high backhand volley against Federer at Wimbledon, maybe looking back, maybe I should have worked on his volley more.
Yeah.
But no, he's probably laughing if he hears this. So no, you don't look back. But we all in life think we could have done more. I think he maybe overachieved. Maybe he thinks he underachieved, which he should. But no, he got the most out of ability because he showed up all the time. You got to think about it. Who's won a Grand Slam in the last 20 years? No one. Andy Roddick. So, you know what I mean? He maybe could have had a couple more, but look who he's at. Look, he's there against people who are talking about Nadal, Federer, Djokovic. He's in an era with the greatest. Now, we'll see where everything's at 20 years from now. So, but no, I think he got as much out of every ounce of fiber, more than any great tennis player. I really believe that because I know him a little bit differently, what's inside that guy. And when the bell rung, he showed up. And I think for any parent or coach, that's all you can expect, And so he was so much about the competition. I mean, he's a human, he gets nervous, but when you love to compete, anybody, anytime, anywhere, and your thirst for competition is so deep, you don't feel pressure as much as other people. You don't blink. And that's what I love about Andy Roddick. I think he's one of the best role models of all time, how he's wired. Okay. And that's what I try to tell all the kids here. You can't buy it at Publix. You can't get it at Walgreens. But every single time he showed up, and like I said, that's what I love about Andy Roddick when I talk to the kids, because he's just a dog. He was there all the time, ready to battle.
Yeah. I mean, are the rumors true, Rick, that you once tried to change Sharapova to a left-handed player?
That is not a rumor. That is true. And I got the video. I had it on VHS, but I transferred it to digital. I have the video of me feeding balls and Yuri's talking in Russian. And I made her forehand. It was epic. Her left-handed forehand was one of the best I've ever seen. Knife through butter, smooth as silk, never missed it. All the dots connected from the kinetic chain all the way up, because her forehand with the righty was all jammed up. And I told her, Dad, listen, this is not natural. No matter what we did, it was flat. The elbow came back in. She had a lot of side spin. So at the end of the day, we did change to. Sorry about that. We changed to a lefty. We changed everything to a lefty. And then what happened as we went down the road? It kind of made her backhand more mechanical, because her backhand as a righty was, like I said, poetry in motion. So, but Yuri wanted her to change, and she actually served halfway decent. She could do either side. So we're doing this for about a month, and then she was actually at Voluntary Tennis Academy, which is now IMG, but she would come to train with me for a month, for like a year. And the IMG boys caught wind of this, and they came down and didn't want her to change. So it was interesting. They kind of convinced the dad, stick the righty. And I just told Yuri, I said, listen, if she's going to play righty, she needs to reverse the racket to get more vertical component and get more spin on the ball. The forehand, as she went into pro tennis eventually, she worked with Robert Lansdorf a lot, the great Robert Lansdorf, one of my best friends. Robert's amazing with technique, hitting flat. He did a lot for her forehand. I think credit should go where credit's due. But I told her they should reverse the racket to induce more spin. And you saw her do that a lot. And that kind of auto-correct. Yeah, that kind of auto-corrected the elbow. But her forehand was never going to be world-class, but it turned out not to be as much a liability. But yeah, the rumors are true. I was going to teach her left-handed. I think if she'd have stuck with it, I think we'd have worked out the two-handed backhand, because she was still going to be connected. But listen, how can you complain? I knew that, once again, just like Sophia Kenin, like Venus, Serena, Capriati, Roddick, they had it inside. Now you got to check a few more boxes, but mentally, I'll say this out. Maria might have been the best mentally player I've ever had. She was like in a bubble at 11, even though her agility wasn't going to be world class. She worked her butt off on her feet. Her defense wasn't amazing. She never liked the volley. She hit swing volleys when they were at her toenails. She wouldn't even do the classic volley, but she didn't need to, because mentally she was a warrior, and off the ground she was relentless. She controlled the center of the court, but mentally Maria was special. But that's a true story. We were going to teach her left-handed, and we tried to.
I mean, we talked about the Williams, Roddick, Pierce, Kenin, Sharapova. All of them have different playing styles, heights, and personalities. What is the common thread between all these great champions?
First off, a great question, because they all had different grips, different technique, different body types, different environments, Russian, American, whatever. I could go on and on. But there's only one thing in common, and I've been asked that question. Mentally, they were just different. I'll say it again, the thirst for competition. Everybody's competitive, me, you, whatever. There's just a different level, the way they competed, and that, I see that. I was just at Little Mo this weekend watching some kids. There's some just amazing competitors, but maybe they're not going to be that big, or maybe they're not going to be that fast, or maybe their techniques all over, Palm Beach County, whatever that could be corrected if you get in the right environment, that it's not too late, and I could reverse engineer it and maybe put Humpty Dumpty together. But at the end of the day, just the competitiveness was just very different. And everybody was like that. But I mean, Roddick would die for the ball on a hard court. And Serena and Venus ran so hard. They checked all the boxes, all those people. But I need to clarify, Venus and Serena as competitors, they added a few more boxes, if that's possible. It was just different. They would fall down to get to the ball. That's how it was, just like a rage. And when you're like that, and you always are like that every point, whether it's an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, that wears on you. And that's the wild card that the media doesn't understand. A lot of coaches don't understand that competitiveness. That's just deep. Everybody's competitive. There's different levels to everything in life, but that's the one common thread. But VW and Meek, that's just a whole different thing. And as I sit here, 30 years later, and I've had so many national champions. It's over 322 kids or titles have been won, and I could go on, and I've had so many great players. I've just never seen what I saw inside Venus and Serena. If I did, that would be a good starting point.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to briefly touch on something unrelated to tennis. I've read somewhere in your book, Macy Magic, that in the 90s you had a personal relationship with Donald Trump. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a bit more, and what was he like as a person?
Yeah, everybody will say like President Trump. I call him the Trumpster. Okay, yeah. So I had this girl who was 14, #1 in Florida, and she could sing and she could act. And the dad said, listen, IMG doesn't believe in her singing and acting. And I did, I heard her sing and act. And so I said, listen, let me make a call, because back then, Donald Trump, they had a management company called T Management, where they represented singers, dancers, artists. And I knew the pro at Mar-a-Lago. So I called up and said, listen, can we come up here and practice? And I'd like to talk to Donald. This was in the late 90s. He wasn't, president or anything. And so he goes, yeah, come up on a Saturday. He leaves the house at this time. He walks through the facility. He'll walk through the tennis, and then he goes and plays 18 holes of golf. And he'll see you on court 1. Or not, he'll see the girl and a hitting partner. And he'll know it's something different, because usually it's club players. Okay, unless pros are there or something. So just like he said, 9 o'clock, Donald comes. He walks up to Anthony, the pro there, and he sees these two people just ripping ground strokes like missiles from North Korea back and forth. I had a hitting partner who was like 180 in the world, and Monique was hitting, and he noticed. And then he points to me, and I'm down at the other end with the father. So Donald comes up, he introduces himself, and goes, what's going on here? And I said, well, this is Monique, and da-da-da, and da-da-da, and here's what we're looking to do, and I know you have this. And so he said, listen, if you need anything, let me know, and we'll see what we can do. He just talked to Anthony, the coach. So I said, she's with IMG and all this stuff. So I go back to Anthony. I said, listen, I'd like to set up a trip to New York and talk to general counsel or whatever, to have them represent Monique, because I think with their connections with Sony and all these production companies and record companies, that's what I thought of Monique. Okay, or just opportunities maybe to sing the national anthem or to do certain things, because it wasn't just about tennis, even though that was going to be the big ticket item. So me and the father, we flew up to New York. We did the deal for them to represent Monique. And what was crazy, then we went in, talked to Donald, and he said, are you going back to Florida? And I said, yeah, we got a flight at 6:30 commercial. He goes, well, if you want to go early, I'm leaving, at 4 o'clock. Why don't you come back on my plane? So I said, let's get out of here. So we ended up, Rick and I, the father, who's no longer alive, and that really affected Monique's career big time. And that's one of the key reasons I felt she didn't make it. But we went on the plane with Donald, and it was amazing because he comes onto the plane, and there's like 20 other people flying from New York. It was Friday. They're going to Florida, to Mar-a-Lago to the resort. and he gives out potato chips and pretzels. He's giving out food to everybody, and all cast of characters are there. And he sits down beside me, and we just start talking for 2 hours. He would get up now and then. New Jersey General, Herschel Walker, tennis, U.S. Open, John McEnroe, New York. I'm gonna tell you, one of the nicest guys I ever met. Okay, he's a builder. He's in construction. He's a promoter, but he's one of the smartest guys. But one of the best communicators. But he just said, we just talked. We hit it off great, and he said, you're the best. You're the best. And I said, you probably say that to everybody. He goes, you're right, but you're with me right now. You're the best. So he's a really funny guy. And he said, there's a party next week. If you want to come, I'm having the Beach Boys play. And I'm sitting there going, the only time I've heard the Beach Boys is on my jukebox here at home. And he brings them to his house, the whole group. Now remember, this was the late 90s. So at the end of the day, we ended up eventually doing the deal that September at the US Open. And I actually, listen to this is crazy. I closed the deal. I got this girl $1.8 million from FILA, $600,000 a year guaranteed. I did it on a napkin in the hallway of the US Open by the lounge with their general counsel. So the next day, Bernie Diamond, who was the attorney at that time, he goes, Rick, come to Trump Towers. Donald wants to talk to you. So I go there the next day, and remember, this got 1.8. He's getting 10%, and I'm getting 10%. I go in his office, and he goes, you're amazing. You're amazing. I told you, you're the best. You're the best. I go, of course you call me the best. I just made you $180,000. He goes, you're right. You're right. You are the best. And so listen, but just a great guy. That's just a great guy. And I think then as time goes on, we were with him for like 4 years, and Monique broke both her wrists. Her dad passed away. It turned into a nightmare. She never really got past 300 in the world. She got some opportunities to do other stuff, but that time in my life was amazing. And when he ran for president and he won, the next day, I gave a speech to all the kids, and people don't realize this. And I'm not political. I don't really get into this stuff. It was more about, you can do anything, because remember, everything was against this guy, an outsider, me against the world. Forget Rocky Balboa, forget the 69 Mets, forget, Venus making her debut and shocking the world. I mean, and everybody with the media is against the guy. Okay. And you got to get rid of the noise. And so that shows you the fortitude and the mental strength of Donald Trump. Love it or hate him. This isn't political. I'm just talking what he did probably made people more mad. I mean, it was just when people are just on TV, just crushing you and pulling the other way. It's not like general. This is every day. It's the greatest upset in the history of the world. I don't care about anything that happened in our lifetime. It never happened, and let alone run for president. And I tried to frame it up in the way that I can do it in a very understandable way to the kids. I almost had tears in my eyes, because you don't realize and I don't realize what this guy, the perseverance. Listen, he didn't have, and on top of it, he doesn't have to do any of this crap. So that alone shows you the character of the Trumpster. But I just need to say, one of the nicest, smartest guys I've ever met. I've met a lot of people, and it has nothing to do with president, because I met him when he wasn't, and he was the same guy I would see. Now, obviously, when he would say things, you kind of cringe and stuff, but I'm not into that whole scene. It was a great time, and it just shows you what a great dad he has to be, and a great person. But unfortunately, no one sees that, because he's on TV and became president. Then it becomes a whole different thing. But what a great human being.
I mean, Rick, tell me about other influences in your life that you count as major milestones or turning points, besides working with the Williams, having your own academy, and all the great champions you've worked with and are still working with.
Yeah. Wow. Another great question. I think, I grew up in a small town of Greenville, Ohio. You know, there's people now that approached people that kind of represent me about maybe a short story about my life or even a movie. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, you know, I grew up, my dad died when I was 10 years old. I was very good at golf. I thought I would always be a golf pro, you know, and when we couldn't afford the country club to go to the country club, it was a town of 10,000 people, and both my parents were very good in golf. I went to a tennis court at 12 years old. I picked up a racket, just started hitting against the wall. The courts were like a half mile. I lived in a park in Greenville, Ohio, and I hit against the wall, and I loved the sound of the ball, and there was no one to play with. And, you know, to make a long story short, I fell in love with the game. No one gave me a lesson. At 18 years old, I was the #1 player in the Ohio Valley. I got to be pretty decent, you know, beat some guys around 400 or 500. But I knew early on I wanted to get into teaching. But my mom raised me by myself, me and my sister. And, you know, middle family, never had anything. After basketball practice, I'd hit against the wall. The janitor would like close up and kick me out after basketball practice. I was actually pretty good in basketball, probably better than tennis. And then I'd go home and eat, and I'd come back and hit against the wall. I'd shovel snow and hit against the wall because I couldn't go to Dayton, Ohio, which was 30 miles away, to play indoor tennis. I just wanted to get better, and I just would outwork the competition. And maybe I do that to some degree today. I work all the time, as you know, 7 days. And those values. So my mom obviously was a driving force, but she never made me do anything. She hardly came and watched me play. I think she watched me play basketball in high school more than tennis. So I think just being around that and doing it the hard way, and I played football, baseball, basketball, hockey. I was very athletic. So I think that mental strength I got from having to do it my own. I even played a tournament once with a cast on my hand. It's in my book. You know, I had a cast. I was tossing the ball. I actually played better, you know, and I had a two-handed backhand because I ran around. My footwork got better, and my slice got better. And I beat a guy worse than when I had my two-hander. That really made me think, you know, I don't go around breaking kids' arms to get them better, but there was a message in that. But no, I think doing it the hard way and seeing it through a different lens, and, you know, never throwing my racket. I never really got upset. I got more determined. But I'd have to say my mom. And then, you know, with the tennis would be obviously Dr. James Laird. You know, people don't know this. In the early 80s, when I went to Greenleaf, he was a pioneer. He was really the first of the Mohicans in sports psychology. Now they're a dime a dozen and everybody rewraps it, but Jim was cutting edge. And to be able to slow things down in your mind and try to get the ideal performance state, and, you know, just being around him for 3 or 4 years. And, you know, when I was younger, it had a profound effect, not only how I was already wired, because I was wired like that as a kid. And I like to analyze things. I go to the movie with my friends, and after 5 minutes, I'd be trying to figure out the ending. They go sit somewhere. They didn't want to sit with me because I'm always trying to figure out the ending. So I'm always like trying to figure things out. And I think all those qualities helped me obviously as a coach. But James Laird, there's not even anybody close, because I've kind of developed my own style. And then after that, as later on as life went on, you know, with biomechanics, it's, you know, Jack Groffel to some degree, but Dr. Brian Gordon, one of my best friends. I mean, the guy's like the guru. I mean, he's so cutting edge. He's like, I just have so much respect for Dr. Brian Gordon. And it's just helped me become even more complete. It's not just about how I communicate or how I motivate, or, you know, or what I do with strokes or strategy. It's now backed up by science, and the kinetic chain is a big staple of how I can be more authoritative and confident in every word I say, and help all ages, whether it be adults, an 86-year-old guy, a 4-year-old, or, you know, I work with about 30 girls on the tour and about 6 guys. So it doesn't matter who's on the other side of the net. So it's really the influences. The biggest ones have been them, but I think the biggest is myself. And I think what I expect of myself is the most important. And that's really my message to anybody. You know, you got to have those conversations with yourself, because when you know you're not giving 100%, you're giving 90. If it doesn't bother you, no big deal. I'm not here to judge anybody, but I know what great is, and I know what good is. And great great is rare air and good is good. And I try to get better every day. I try to prove myself every day. It doesn't matter if I'm teaching the number one 12-year-old girl in the nation, or I'm teaching someone that just wants to learn great strokes from Rick Macci at age 5. And that, I think I've been so consistent doing the same thing and being the same way. And hopefully that came loud and clear in the movie. And I think Richard knew that, and that's why you can see it in the movie. I was part of their family. I wasn't just a coach. We were a team, and we were in this together.
And final thoughts, Rick. After so many decades in the coaching business, what do you hope is your legacy in tennis?
Well, you know, I don't really look at it because I don't want to say I'm just getting started. You know, actually tomorrow's my birthday. I'll be 67, you know, but I still teach 50 hours. I get up every morning at 3:30. I open up the park. It's crazy. At this age, on my resume, I'm a park ranger now. I open up the park. Palm Beach County gave me the keys. I'm the only guy probably to have keys to the front gate of the park. This place is breathtaking. It's like Disneyland and Candyland. I don't know how to answer that question. I just think that everybody has something to offer. There could be a guy in Des Moines, Iowa that maybe does something better than myself. I don't sit there and people tell me, you know, I'm the GOAT, or I'm the, you know, 7-time coach of the year, or youngest in the Hall of Fame, or over 300 and some national titles, or everybody I coach, all this stuff. That's all great. But people ask me, like, who's my favorite student of all time? And I tell them that's so easy. It's like, who's ever on the other side of the net, that hour, that minute, that second. And that's how I like people. You were there too. Okay. And I think you kind of know me different because I taught you. And I treat everybody the same and give the same effort. You know, I've been that way ever since when someone told me when I was 22 years old that I think you have what it takes to be one of the greatest teachers or coaches of all time. Tom Friedel back in Ohio told me that. And I'm sitting there going, I want to be a better player. My mind wasn't even there, but he saw qualities. And I guess that's how I'd want people to look at it, that I gave 100%. You know, I made it fun for everybody, but I expected a lot. There's different ways to get to the mountaintop. And I have a very unique way, not just the technique and the strategy of extracting greatness out of people, especially young people, to get them to believe. And I want people, I guess, to look at me as like the total package, whether it's sports psychology, whether it's motivation, whether it's footwork, of physical fitness, whether it be biomechanics, strategy, communication. I think, and like a player, you're only as great as your weakest link. So if my legacy, I just want people to know I gave 100%, and it was always about the game of tennis, and it wasn't really ever about me. The credit comes along with whatever you do. I'm just out there to give 100%. And if I can make a difference in someone's life, whether I help them get off medication or clean their room better or make better grades, I mean, that's really, that's the ultimate all-time greatest coach of all time. Because when you can change people's lives, you know, and that's what I tell people. I want to be known. I just didn't change people's tennis games. I changed their lives. And when you leave that type of legacy, I think then you're in rare air.
I mean, final question, Rick, and you sort of answered it, but what separates good players and great players?
Another very good question. It's the mental part. It's a package. You know, it's like I tell people, it's like a pizza. There's cheese pizza, then there's one with everything on it. The more boxes you check, you don't need to have everything. But if mentally you can't handle pressure, if you can't flip it in your mind and forget about it, it's not going to work. Because I have people here that have amazing technique. The serve is amazing. The forehand's amazing. The backhand's amazing. And they can't compete. They can't win. And they lose to people that have a worse forehand, backhand serve. And, you know, they probably want to sue me for malpractice. You know, what's going on here? You know, but that's the wild card. And that needs to be, you got to be able to flip it. If you don't have the ability to forget, you cannot be great in this sport or any sport, quarterback, basketball player. You got to have the ability to forget. It's not remember. You can study, watch video, read, but if you can't forget, as in tennis, you got 20 seconds to make it like 20 years. And if you don't have that ability, it ain't going to happen. That's why I love Sharapova. She was already in the bubble. Now, you can get mad, but can you turn it into determination like Serena or Roddick or Kenin? You see her slam the ball down and she comes back even harder. Some people get mad and they lose the next game. You see that all the time in junior tennis. So you got to train your mind, but that's what separates it, all things being equal.
Yeah.
You give me someone that has this, okay, the sky's the limit. But obviously, you got to hate to lose more than you love to win. And unfortunately, a lot of coaches don't understand this part of it. A lot of parents don't. Trust me on that. The environment you're in has a big impact. And this all goes back to all the people I coach, the environment I create, especially when they work privately with me. I try to cover the whole enchilada. But that environment I created for Venus and Serena, you know, was just like, it was supposed to happen. Even for Jennifer, it was all positive. And why I brought up Jennifer, I need to clarify. It'd have been amazing in the movie if they'd have done one thing. At the end with the credits, I wish they would have put in there, and by the way, she came back and became number 1 in the world and won 2 Grand Slams and signed a $10 million deal with Fila. So I know it sounds better, but because I love Jennifer. She's one of my all-time favorite students. And, you know, I get it. But at the end of the day, maybe people that see this podcast, they need to know, because some people weren't even born and they see her as like the poster child for a speed bump. And no, listen, everybody, to me, it's even more of an epic thing when you go where she went and you come off the tour, but then you come all the way back and win 2 Grand Slams and become number 1. Give me a break. Rocky Balboa shocked the world. Jennifer Capriati has a story there also.
I mean, Rick, it's been an absolute pleasure seeing you again. We've gone
Good seeing you.
Double our agreed time. Happy birthday tomorrow, and thanks so much for your time.
But on another note, how's your ground strokes?
Yeah, not too bad. Pat the dog at 5 o'clock.
Okay, you remember, I'm sending you a t-shirt.
That's good.